Hi everyone, welcome to Limeliting, where I shine the spotlight on cool places, people, and things that are in the board game hobby. I went to Family Time Games, which is in Indianapolis on the northwest side of Indy. My girlfriend and I went to find a game, and we found this beautiful box by Renegade Games. And we bought it. We didn't know anything about it, and we bought it. About 6 months to a year later, we go to an event, and we meet these two wonderful individuals, and they designed the game. After that, I fanboyed all out. With me today is Jordan and Mandy. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having us.
We decided this is a little special Thanksgiving, I guess you'd call it, so I'm changing some of my rules. So the place is going to be their home. This is more homey-like, very Thanksgiving. So
It's homey-like until the kids wake up. They're napping right now, so if you hear them in the middle of this, that's what that is.
It's all right. And Thing, because it was the game that introduced me to them, we're playing Lotus. We're actually going to be playing a different copy.
Yeah, so there are several, I don't know how many copies. I think there's maybe 7 languages or 6 or 7 languages at this point. This is the Russian version of all of the localized versions in different languages. I think this is our favorite. They made some changes that were kind of unique and fun. So they use like different materials for the stones, different materials for the guardians, and then full art cards and some stuff. So if you see some of it written in Russian, that's what that is.
That's awesome.
But it's a fun one to try out, so we broke it out for today.
I'm not going to show you technically how to play or any reviews. I want to also give to the board game community, so I will have links to other folks. Rodney Smith, if he's done one, or Tom, or Mark, or anyone else that's in the community, to give them some love as well.
Sure.
So we're just going to play the game. However, it has been a minute.
The less you know, the more likely I am to win. So let's.
You're still playing against me.
I know. Likely I am to not lose.
To come in second.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Speaking of which, well, why don't we go first? I guess let Mandy go first to see a turn in
I'd
action.
be happy to.
Yeah.
All right, so first action, second action,
Okay.
and then draw back up. So you always have 4 in your hand.
I'm going to first action, second, and that's it.
And remember, you can always draw from the Wildflower deck if there's something there that you like. One of the 4 face up or face down cards. I am really glad to see how this is going so far. First action. Second action.
No.
Jeez.
Jeez.
So, 1, 2, 3, 4 beats 1, 2, 3, and I completed it. So, I will take all of the cards.
And a gem.
Actually, yeah, I'm going to take gems.
Okay.
Sometimes I go special powers first, but not today. Draw back up to 2 cards, and it's demanding.
So Jordan, are you born and raised here in Indianapolis, and where from?
No, I was born in Arkansas, mostly raised in Tennessee. We had a bunch of acreage out in Tennessee, and kind of grew up on not like a working farm from the perspective of we grew things to sell, but we, had gardens and farms and pigs and cattle and
chickens
and
bird dogs,
bunnies and goats and bird dogs and about 1,000 quail.
Are you also from?
No.
Okay,
No,
you're
she's just been out there a lot with me. Yeah.
He's the country boy.
Where are you
I'm
from?
from Fort Wayne,
Okay.
Indiana. So I'm a suburbs girl. I've lived in Indiana my whole life. Fort Wayne is where I grew up, and then went to school at Purdue, and then moved here right after. So been around these parts for quite some time.
How did you guys meet? I mean, did you come up to Indianapolis, or?
Yeah, I came up here for work. I guess it's probably been 7 or 8 years ago at this point. 8 or 9 years ago, somewhere in there. And then I met Mandy, and now I'm not allowed to leave. So yeah, I came up here for work, and I convinced myself I'd be up here for 6 months, and it's been 7 or 8 years, something like that.
So how old were you, and what were you doing?
I don't remember how old I was. And
Funny story. He didn't know how old he was.
that's actually a true story. So when we met, I was convinced. So look, I'm not great with dates. I'm not a number. I guess I am a numbers guy, but I'm not good with dates for some reason.
No.
And so for whatever reason, I did not know how old I was when we met. I
So-
thought I was at one age, I guess.
Yeah, we started dating in August, and his birthday's in November, and he
Yeah.
told me his age that he was about to turn in, 3 months. And so I was thinking that's how old he is currently, and so he's going to turn a year older come November. So we went on for dating for weeks or something, and came up, and I mentioned his age, and I mentioned what year he was born. He said, no, I was born in 1984. I said, no. I said, you can't be 28 years old and also have been born in 1984, or whatever the age was.
Yeah, and I was
And he
like,
was
okay, dum-dum. Here's my license.
I
You
know.
think you know.
I said, well, then you're 27.
And it turns out I was 27. Who knew?
It was
She gave me a whole year back.
And what were you doing that brought you up into Indianapolis?
So I was working for a restaurant franchising company, kind of helping with new locations and helping with locations that were struggling, and so it's kind of bouncing around the I-65 corridor and kind of over in Ohio and Alabama and Nashville, and then up here, and they moved me up here to do some work for a while, and I thought it was going to be a short stay. And
Yeah, he was supposed to help restructure 2 stores and then go back, and I met him during the second store, and he ended up changing jobs and staying here.
Yep. Funny how that works. It's your turn.
No, I went.
Okay.
So it's my turn.
Quit your chatting.
So what
It's literally a show about chatting.
I'm gonna do this, I think, and then I'm gonna do this. And do that. Did you go to school, college?
Arizona State. Well, Northern Arizona, and then Arizona State.
Where'd you get a good degree in?
Studied finance and music.
Finance and music?
Yep. Studied music for a number of years, and then I had a professor who was very kind. Steve Hemphill, if you're watching this, thank you. He was very kind insofar as he told me that, in no uncertain terms, that I would never be a professional musician. And he was like, look, you're decent with numbers, you should study finance or business. And so he was a very kind guy, but he was just very clear on that. So,
Nice job, Mandy.
Thanks.
kind of got out of the music biz.
And then, what did you go to school for, Mandy?
Business management.
Okay.
Having no idea what I was going to do with it. But it was a nice, well-rounded degree that it ended up finding me my first job, which was just a consulting job where I got to do a lot of different things and helping businesses write financial plans or do customer research and marketing plans. It was kind of like a little bit of everything. So it was a lot of fun.
Were you doing that during the time when Jordan met you?
Yeah.
Is it me? Yeah.
I was working for that consulting firm when I met Jordan. Since then, I've moved to, I started working for Salesforce as project manager. So that's where I've been the last 5 years. But yeah, I mean, I'm more the organized project manager type, and he's more the creative people person.
Sure. You gotta draw lines. I guess that's a good spot to draw.
Yeah.
The quote she uses often is, "We'd never start anything without me, and we'd never finish anything without her."
Yeah.
That's very accurate.
Yeah, because he always has all the ideas, or wants to start things, constantly wanting to start something new, whether it's a hobby or a business or just a project around the house. He wants to start a million things. But I feel so obligated to finish things. I have a million to-do lists, and I want to, wrap stuff up. So that kind of just our nature to start things and then get them done.
It's not that you finish them; it's that you make sure I finish.
No, I don't finish them.
Projects are weird things. They go through all the stages of any project. Ooh,
Nice.
and you win that one cleanly. When you first have the idea, it's the greatest idea in the world, and then
You get halfway through and
you
doubt
get
yourself.
halfway, and then you get close to the end, and then you realize it's the worst idea in the world, and then you release it, and people say, "Hey, that wasn't so bad."
There you go.
And at any point in there, it's pretty easy to quit. our first game was fairly text heavy, and we wanted to create a language independent game, and so this is kind of what came out of that. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Nice.
And then one more.
What? You can't do that.
3 moves?
You don't have
All right. That comes back. And I lose that, but I committed to
You
playing
complete it,
first.
but you lose the control.
Yep,
Okay,
we do.
so do you want another special power or a 5-point gem?
I think I'm gonna go. This is Katie's tactic. She really likes the Guardian.
Nice.
So
That's-
I'm gonna
Mandy
try.
likes that too.
I'm gonna try that.
Yeah, but did you notice I went hand size this time?
I saw that.
Trying something different.
I almost always sprint for points. Every time. Like, I just go gems.
I
and
do
doesn't
hand
always-
size for sure, first off the bat, and then I do gems or the.
Yeah, it's so funny because people will argue. First of all, people love to. If they played your game once, they love to tell you that it's broken. And so on the internet, there's plenty of people that weigh in and go, the game's broken. If you just choose this power, you win every time. And then somebody else will say, the game's broken. If you just choose this other power, it's like, all right, well, if it's working, if everybody picks something different and they all think it works, then it's probably okay. But it's fun to watch those debates.
Mm-hmm.
How long ago did you guys meet?
Oh, man.
2012.
Is that
so
it?
7 years.
There you
go.
7.5 years.
When did you guys marry?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you going to
do
ask
you
me
know
these questions? We got married twice, apparently.
No,
So
no.
glad I'm asking these questions.
Yeah, we have 2 anniversaries as far as I'm concerned.
We do. It's a little confusing. We legally got married, went to the courthouse and got the paperwork. Legally, marriage license.
Okay.
Was that
Married.
October 3rd?
That was August 28th, 2015.
August 28th.
It was the exact
Oh my gosh,
3-year
my parents.
anniversary of our first date. So it was a date that I remembered and meant something to me. But
That's
then
cool.
we had the ceremony in October in Tennessee, down on his grandparents' farm. And so the whole family thinks of our anniversary as October 3rd.
Which is like a
And
week
it's
later.
confusing. It's a month and a half later.
Alright, whatever. I'm
But
just saying, like,
it is
was
confusing.
really close.
I call our anniversary August 28th.
Now,
So 4 years.
But we've forgotten our anniversary 2 years in a row.
We've been busy.
so what are you currently doing as far as work?
Sure. So I do a lot of things. Mandy would tell you I probably do too many things. But I work for a company called Servant HR. We do outsourced HR solutions. I'm in business development for them. And then we have a number of side projects. We do some consulting work together. We do game development. We have a type shop in downtown Carmel
Yeah, he
right
sells
now.
old typewriters.
You
Did you know
sell
that?
old typewriters.
Yeah.
To be fair, I restore and sell old typewriters.
I'm
Yeah,
surprised
he
Tom
does.
Hanks hasn't like come to find you because
First
that's
of
his
all,
thing.
That
I
would
know
be
it is.
wonderful.
I
Could you give
know.
him a call? 'Cause
He has a wonderful
Very nice.
collection.
Somewhere in there, you guys also designed these board games. Your first board game that came out was in 2015, kickstarted,
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
called Collapse.
Sure.
How did that come about?
Okay.
And also, maybe I should also backtrack. This is 2 questions. Did you ever play board games when you were a kid or high school or college?
Sure.
What were they? Same question for you.
Sure.
He was out back cutting down trees and building log cabins. He wasn't
Yeah.
playing board games.
Yeah, I was getting into general mischief.
Yeah.
Real quick though, whose turn is it?
It's mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was generally getting into mischief. So I didn't play a lot of board games. Probably I grew up in the South, so Rook was the game that we played quite a bit. But I was never any good at it. I wouldn't say we played a lot of games growing up.
No, my family did. We
yeah.
were board game obsessed. We did not get out much. We played board games. We played Nintendo games. Oh, we tied on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So you'll get these, and then you'll each get your choice of powers or points.
So I grew up playing all the classic games, Monopoly, Scrabble, Sorry, Parcheesi, all those. My mom and I would play, Mall Madness.
Oh,
Junior
yeah.
Phone,
What a cool game.
Ask Xandar. Did you ever play Ask Xandar?
No.
Nobody ever
It
played
had
the game.
that it was a little wizard, and you put your hand over it, and he would talk to you. Okay.
Oh, that's cool.
And then, like with my dad was an actuary, well, he is an actuary, still. And, so very numbers based. We would do a lot of like logic puzzles, and our game was Acquire. We used to play that a lot.
Still a good game.
Game.
Still a
Still a
great
great
That's
game.
a good game.
Yeah, but he introduced me to that. which I loved.
What's been interesting is most of the people that are that I've been interviewing so far, very few played quote unquote postmodern board games. They played Parcheesi, Catchphrase, Monopoly, Sorry.
At the time most of us were growing up, all those games that you're going to define as current or modern were still in Germany.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't really have a lot of access to them here.
Yeah, but it was my brother that really introduced us to those. He
To
brought
modern.
home Settlers of Catan the first time, so that he introduced us to that.
Yeah, that's true.
Small World was one of the first games that he played with my brother, and kind of got Jordan into really wanting to play more games.
Yeah, her brother is a art lead or cinematic lead for Warner Brothers, but on the video game side. So he does like
Wow.
Mortal Kombat and
Just like
Injustice, so those are his games, and so he
NetherRealms.
yeah,
I
that's
told
who it is,
you.
NetherRealms.
Yeah,
We
NetherRealms
didn't
up
get out
in the
much.
Chicago area.
Yeah, he's up in Chicago. That's exactly right. So he's with them and kind of has an extensive game background on all kinds of platforms, and so kind of introduced us to more modern stuff. And then the story for like our first game we developed was because we were dating and playing games a fair bit, and then we would like make up some just for fun, but they would be really terrible. Our first concerted effort to design a game was I worked at Apple at the time, and I had a coworker who was kind of a doomsday prepper, and as a
Not kind of. He was
definitely
really
a doomsday prepper.
A true life.
He was for real.
prepper.
And so he also loved board games, and so we thought for his birthday we'll make him a deck builder that's about prepping, and you know how jokes go, they get out of hand. So then I hired an artist, and then we worked on manufacturing, and before we knew it, like we had a really great little game to give him for his birthday, and we thought we should just put it on Kickstarter to recoup some of our costs. And then, it kind of blew up on Kickstarter, or at least it did well, better than we expected. Then Popular Mechanics wrote an article about us, and then a bunch of other people kind of like were excited about the game. So we just thought we'll try it again. And then
Popular Mechanics wrote
an
article about a board game?
Yeah, it was really...
Because he was posting a lot to different subreddit threads on game design, and he was asking for opinions, like, what of the artwork do you like better between A and B? And just, what names would you give a game about doomsday prepping? And so he got the community on Reddit really involved.
That's amazing.
And somebody from
one of them was a writer.
Yeah, they caught, I have a thread that, got a lot of attention and kind of hit the top of that.
Yeah, and so then that
board game.
So we thought, it was so funny. We were at lunch one day when we were dating, and I was still, like trying to convince her dad that it was okay for me to be dating her and or want to marry her one day. And so we were at dinner or lunch with her dad one day, and he was like, "And what are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm making a board game for a friend." And he was like, "Okay, you hired an artist?" And I was like, "Yeah, that makes sense, right?" And he was like, "I don't know." And he's like, "And how much have you spent?" And I told him the number, and he was like, "And you think that's practical?" And I'm like, "I don't know, it seems cool." So
you made my elder.
Yes.
So when the article came out, when the Kickstarter did, 10x what we wanted it to do, like, I was like, we did okay. So that was kind of fun. And then we just decided, we had a number in mind. If it profited X number, then we would do another one. And then the next one we did was Lotus. And then that was kind of just like, we're just going to
we had so much fun with Collapse. Because before we decided to do a Kickstarter, we did try to find a publisher that would take it.
That's true.
And that whole process was a ton of fun because he kind of just met everybody he could meet. He networked through the internet, and then we went to conventions like Origins in Columbus, Ohio, and then Gen Con here in Indy. And we met as many people as we could meet, other game designers, publishers, people who were, in game development in general that could give us advice.
So this really snowballed
from
like just a fun project to give to a friend to like
100%.
This is really fascinating.
Everything you see is a joke that got out of hand.
What made it so fascinating for both of you? Because you came up with the idea and you're like, oh, I want to help.
Yeah, that pretty well
I don't know. It wasn't the first project that we worked on together. We always really wanted to have some sort of a side business together. We even started an LLC for a previous
how long were we dating when we started?
We were dating about a year when we started our LLC.
Really?
For a different business. We were making fabric coffee sleeves
like you do.
That coffee shops would sell with their logo. We'd custom print their logos on them. So we had really a huge desire to do something kind of on the side together that was fun for us. And this was kind of the perfect combination of him getting to run a little side business and me getting to play games. So it was a perfect mix, I think.
Bummer.
Oh.
You get both of those. That's good.
He took it?
Yep.
Oh, because of the elder.
Yep.
So what I say in all of my videos is that really I'm just distracting you guys with questions.
So
Sure.
you can beat it.
Yeah. And what we say in all of our interviews is we're really just letting you win.
Oh, good.
Which we've been accused of before, but it's definitely not true.
So nobody picked up the game.
Nobody
for
wanted
collapse.
collapse.
No.
So you decided to try Kickstarter, which was
Yeah.
also at that time maybe one of the very first board games to be Kickstarter.
I would not say that. It was not one of the first. It was probably
It might have been before.
But you're
the
in
big...
beginning stages.
maybe. I mean, it was late enough in the Kickstarter game such that it was not like a big leap. Like we weren't trying something untested. Like it was the natural thing to do.
It was definitely a first for us.
It was a first for us, but it was established enough. Kickstarter was established enough as a venue that we didn't feel like
There were some good examples that we were able to take from.
Lanterns had just gone up, or was going up at the time.
And we were able to see what kinds of stretch goals and you know different backer levels that other games that were being released at the time were doing. So we definitely benefited from not being the very first. I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was tough.
But it was early enough in Kickstarter that you could write a note to the Kickstarter team and say like, "Hey, you should feature our game."
That's amazing.
And then they did it. Well, they didn't at first, and we wrote them back
Took
like,
a while.
"Hey, there's a popular mechanics article coming out." And then they were like, "Yeah, okay, fine." So that helped it get a little traction.
That's neat.
Yeah.
Let's see. You have.
They definitely don't allow you to do that anymore.
What, contact them directly?
Well, yeah. I mean, you probably could if you knew who to ask, but.
That's the thing. I would never know the first thing or who to go to. That's the stuff you're good at. You always find the people. Oh boy.
Nope.
I have that power. I've yet to use it.
1, 2, 3, 4 to 1,000,000. So.
Yeah. You didn't have to count that one. All right. Would you like your last?
Nice, picking up. He's just he's just screaming gems over there.
Oh, he's taking gems.
Yeah,
got it.
We're not gonna do so hot. All right.
So that went well, and then it came out officially 2015 to backers.
Fulfilled it, yeah.
So then,
I swapped.
what you're talking a year? No, the next one is 2016.
Was it 16? Yeah.
Yeah, we finished fulfilling the Collapse Kickstarter around June of 2015, and then that year the convention cycle, so Origins and Gen Con, is where we were pitching Lotus.
And you were already developing Lotus.
We had already developed.
We started developing Lotus
About this, well.
during the Kickstarter. Because we were in Arizona doing research
that's
on
right.
butterflies for, we thought all of the insects would be butterflies at that point. And so we were, when the milkweed.
To be fair, we didn't
comes in,
go to Arizona to research the game.
No,
we
that
were
does
there
sound
for
cool.
vacation. We went to
Yeah.
this botanical garden place, so it was really cool, and it was inspiring. We took a lot of pictures of flowers and butterflies, and that kind of got us the idea of flowers for this game. We had already been playing around with the mechanic, and with just playing cards, we were laying them
Sushi
out.
go cards.
We did use Sushi Go for a
That's
lot.
right, because of the
Cool.
colors.
Because
Yeah.
the colors were so bright. I started and finished this one.
Good job.
And I suppose at this point I gotta...
That's my favorite, by the way.
collect some
That you guys
5.6.
even added that little tweak to this game that you could literally finish
Sure.
a flower.
Yeah, it feels good when it happens.
I love it. It's one of the most satisfying.
There's
things.
a ton of this game was in development for we worked on it for a year, and then Renegade and we worked on it for another year. But during the year we were solo before we had pitched it to anybody. In fact, I think there were plenty of times we would have we debate rules a lot when we're out on a walk or in a cab or in the airport or whatever.
Yeah,
And
well, and this was pre-kids. We had a lot of time.
Sure.
we had a lot of time.
Whenever we were together, we were.
And so
talking
there are
about
a lot of interesting stories. One of the ones that comes to mind was the Arizona trip when we were in an airport, raising our voices almost, passionately defending rules and forgot we were in public. And so some poor people in the airport had to hear us yelling, "There've got to be more butterflies!"
No, it's
Or
something
no,
like,
what was it? The butterflies have to be stronger!
you're giving the butterflies too much power!
That's what it was. Versions of that for like an hour in the airport. Like, come on, if we don't do that, then no one's going to care about the flowers. Like, I need a reason to want to pick the flowers.
It was pretty funny.
Got a little out of it.
We realized taking a step back that the things we were saying out of context sounded pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, but,
You guys have plenty of board games that are in prototype form right now.
Yes, too many.
You developed Collapse, and then you're telling me that you were already developing another game during the Kickstarter. How do you do that?
Well,
Like, what's the thought process of, are you juggling multiple things in your head now? I mean, even currently, you have many projects that you've got, and so you just kind of do so much and then shelve it, go to the next one, so that you can
sometimes
compartmentalize.
I don't think it's a clean process. And to say that we're busy when we're developing one or two at a time, like there are designers out there developing 30 concurrently. Like, I'm not going to drop names, but there are people out there who are pitching 15 games a show.
15 games?
And selling, 9 of them.
Sure.
Like,
Not a lot of people, but
there's a few that I have in mind that are doing it.
That.
And so, yeah, like we're not that busy compared to some people. But yeah, I think it's nice to have something that is a project you're working on.
Yeah.
And then it's nice to have one that when you're tired of that, when you go give your brain a break and go work on something less complex.
Sure. Okay.
And then dive into them. And then if you do that enough times, you have a bunch.
Well, and they're always at varying stages of completion. And so it's not like we're coming up with all of these ideas and then starting development on all of them at once and then playtesting all at once and then developing final touches all at once. I mean, they're all at totally different stages. So it's kind of, you give your brain a break from, if you're in really intense playtesting, you might want to kind of go back to, hey, let's throw around some of those other ideas. What do you kind of want to do next? For a while, we wanted to do a game about gold digging, and we were looking at the exhibits at the museum, sifting sand for gold, and
I
just
like that.
letting our brain kind of think about what.
It's neat that you guys do go out there and try to go, let's go to a museum. Let's go, inadvertently go to a botanical garden and get ideas. It's kind of fascinating. It's kind of neat.
Well, it's also an excuse to do interesting things because we just kind of tend to be more curious people, I think. But the other thing is we really try not to design, or we don't try to put something out into the world unless it adds something new, kind of the conversations. Like Lotus had a hook, like these little, the way the cards play are kind of interesting. When we did Death Note, the hook was the whole game is played in a book, like a roll and write, but it's an asymmetrical roll and write. So that was kind of new, and it was all played in a book, like the show and the movie. Gates of Delirium had the two-sided cards and the sanity token, and so we just try to do things that add something new. And so the way we get to that is going into the world and experiencing stuff and seeing a kid in the botanical garden playing He Loves Me Not with pulling flower petals off. You're like, oh, that's interesting, or or whatever it is. You get out and you see things, and that they jog kind of memories and experiences that kind of.
Fun fact: there is a He Loves Me Not expansion to
There
Lotus.
is.
What?
Yeah, it's where is it?
What?
It was in the holiday.
It was in the Santa's Renegades box.
I have.
Whereby you have a special power where you can pluck people's petals off their flowers and score them.
It was a fourth tile, right? I have that.
Yeah.
Cool. There you
I
go.
didn't realize what it was though.
It's called He Loves Me Not.
Now you know.
Is it my turn?
It is.
Or I think it's just called Loves Me Not.
Yeah.
I don't think it's.
Oh no, I can't do that. Nope, nope. But you now know. So
we now
that's
know.
cool. All right, well that's fine. I'm just gonna do it because that's the thing. After Lotus, you guys, it was I think a couple years later that then Death Note IDW came out. 2018.
Yep.
Oh, well,
Published.
You've done your research.
Thank you.
I don't even know these
He
things.
knows
I don't even know
dates
when we got
better than you
married.
do.
So.
Right. Yeah, Death Note was actually a much quicker process. Just because of the circumstances.
And that's a 2-player game. So Collapse was a set collecting game, trying to build the resources, deck builder. Lotus has this, as we're watching in the video, like this area control and getting the most points for that final pedal. What was Death Note? Can you explain it and even the thought process of how you made it? Also, I'm going to add another one. Like, what is it like once you start working with a publisher like Renegade or like IDW, working collaboratively to then finish the game out?
Well, in terms of Death Note development, it was the first time for us to have a real, I guess, theme that drove the game design. Because it's based on a series, we were able to kind of immerse ourselves into that series and think about what would you want to do if you were going to experience that show in a game.
That's neat.
So translating how we felt while watching, what are some of the things that are, tension points or plots that get exciting, climax points of the show. So that was really the first time we had something so concrete that we could come back and go, okay, well, how would you take that tension between Detective L and Kira, and how do you, create some mechanics where they're really truly head to head?
So you hadn't even had any prototypes kind of in your little
not.
bin?
No.
Not even close.
Wow.
That was they put a call out to designers, and we got invited to pitch, and so we sent together a pitch doc, which was basically like the whole game is in 2 books. We drew up some dice, and we showed a map, and it's a deduction game where my map is secret from yours, and I play the game in my own little book, and we wanted it to be something like we could play on a train with just a pencil and a book.
Wow. That
and
sounds great.
it grew a little bit out of that scope, but it's still something you can play kind of anywhere. And so we submitted the pitch, and then we heard back the next day, hey, we really like it. 2 more days, they're you have the.
That sounds quick.
Yeah, it was oddly quick.
Yeah. But I think they also had a timeline that they knew they wanted it released by the end of the year, and so that's why I think it was such a quicker process. But we spent a lot more sort of dedicated weeks and months on that game all at once to get it done and developed
really
and
focused.
hand over to IDW.
And that's different for you guys. Again, you do a little bit, and then you still have your full-time jobs, you have 2 kids, and you have other projects that you want to do.
Well, and usually we do a lot of that development before we even know if there's a publisher interested.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of red there.
Really good.
Especially with Lotus, we had it almost fully developed. I mean, at least 85% of what you see here, I think, was the game.
Oh, and you started working on Death Note.
So Lotus released, then Death Note, we got that contract, but the overlap there was we were working on Gates of Delirium. We had been working on Gates of Delirium before we got the Death Note contract, and Death Note started and finished before Gates came out. Just because Gates is a little bit bigger, there was more art, and it was not when you pull from an IP, it's nice because you get all the art. Coming in, whereas we had to kind of start when you build a world or a game from scratch. There's just more that goes into the creative side, I think, on the art, and that took a little while, and then then you're kind of folding into their release schedule, and we knew we wanted it to be kind of close to Halloween, and so you kind of have, you get it done for this Halloween or the next Halloween, and so wasn't ready, so
that's
it just took a little longer. But
the timing worked out really well because we had actually developed Gates almost fully and handed it over to Renegade for their evaluation process and their play testing right about when Death Note development started. Yeah. So we were actually taking a break from Gates of Delirium while developing Death Note. So it was kind of a perfect, timing-wise, it worked out really well that was the next project for us.
I'm pulling the last card.
Okay. Last round has been triggered.
That's a bummer for me because all the
you will get one more turn. He'll go, I'll go, you'll go.
My best shot here is...
And Gates is your newest game. It just came out.
A couple of weeks old at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was originally... The base mechanisms have a Lotus-esque to
Sure.
them, and it might have been a Lotus, but the idea changed to this beautiful game now.
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead, dear. Would you like to do what you're gonna do?
I like the 6 points.
That's
yes.
fine. I'll take the
You'll
5
take
points.
the 5.
Yeah. So we would love to follow Lotus with something else in the Lotus world, without being hyper specific. But so there was work kind of being done in the background on that. And then Scott Gata wanted a Cthulhu gate opening game that had the Lotus opening, kind of cards opening, but they were opening gates instead of building flowers. And so we kind of repurposed what our work was kind of done on a Lotus sequel of sorts, and then it became Gates of Delirium. And so then we added a bunch to that kind of felt more Cthulhian.
Now,
more Lovecraftian.
did this game, and I'm staring off at it in the distance,
Yeah.
did this game take the longest of all your games to develop?
I think from when we started designing it to hitting the shelf, yes. But I don't know that it took the longest in terms of hours put in. You know what I mean? There was a lot of time, like you said, put into the art process.
Mm-hmm.
And so our design part was pretty much done at that point. We're just tweaking rules, rule book wording.
Mm-hmm.
So that part of the process took about a year, which is longer than Lotus did.
Even Lotus, because I'm actually surprised. You look at these cards, and I mean, I've never seen any game with this design at all.
Mm-hmm.
These cards are immaculate, and they're so detailed in their the art aesthetic.
Yeah.
I thought this, of all games, this would have taken a long time.
Yeah, and it took a medium amount of time probably, but I wouldn't call it long. We spent a lot of time pulling things out of it to make it simple. So it started, oddly enough, I thought, it's really interesting that when you hold cards like this, that they fan out. And I was like, what if you just kept going, right? So that's where the idea to do the circular thing. And I was like, what if the art lined up in a way that you built something? So originally it was going to be gears, like you were going to build gears.
Oh, yeah.
And we would each sit on one of the 4 sides of Big Ben. And we were repairing a face of Big Ben by building gear ratios. And,
A neat theme.
yeah, and then you learn everything you can about Big Ben, and then where they hide pennies in different areas to weigh them, and then could you do something with the pennies and stuff. And so then it was like, well, that's a neat idea. Put that away for a minute. Then we were like, maybe it's peacocks, right? And so we thought about that for a minute, and then we're like, yeah. But then there was kind of an underserved population of gamers. Like there was not a ton that it felt like female gamers could go to and would feel like really kind of was their aesthetic. I guess there was a lot of there's a lot of war games and a lot of rough and tumbles.
Yeah, it's like video games. Video games have a lot of their shoot 'em ups and their first persons. And
sure, and there's nothing wrong with those.
No.
They're great, and it doesn't mean that females don't love those games. But
Right.
it was like, wouldn't it be neat if we had something that was visually appealing to a daughter when a dad brought a game home from a convention that she would want to jump in? She could learn area control, hand management, and set collection. Yeah. And then now maybe she's interested in other area control, hand management, and set collection games. That these kind of pulled her into. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of where Flowers came from. And there weren't really many flower games at that point.
No.
It was Flower Fall and maybe a couple others, but not a ton.
I was actually a little worried that it does feel like a male-dominated industry. And I thought, we're coming in with flowers? Aren't they going to look at us like,
should have been gears,
right? Well, I was just a little nervous about that, but it was received so well, and immediately we had people telling us, "Oh, I can take this home to my kids. This is great."
Which is
and so I was kind of eased of that worry right away.
One of the things that I also think is interesting, a lot of people jokingly say that it is deceivingly mean.
Sure. We hear that a lot.
But the reason why, and it's not, I don't really actually feel it's that mean of a game, but you see how beautiful and passive it is to the area majority control aspects. And I just find it humorous that because of the aesthetic, people go, oh, that is way meaner than you think. I'm like, oh, you're fine.
Yeah, but it is. It's like that's a good game design lesson to learn. Like we've learned this through Lotus, and we've tried to do it other places at the games that we're working on. Which, when you pick it up, is the game you play like the game you thought you bought? And so for this, I think there are some people who think they're buying a Zen experience, and then when it's like, oh, but someone can steal my flower, that violates kind of like the contract they had with the art. They were like, wait a minute, I thought I was getting into this kind of game. So like that's a good lesson to learn. I don't know that. I mean that you could call it a mistake, you could call it an opportunity,
Cheeky.
but it's like, you know, yeah, there's some part of this aesthetic that is undermined by me stealing something you were working on by playing the last pedal. So that's, you know, something to target when you're designing new things. But
Well, and one thing we added at the end of the rule book is the family variant.
yeah,
Which is basically, if you've
wonderful.
got 4 players, you can team up 2 and 2. And gameplay is the
I haven't even
same.
played that.
You
But
need
the
to. It's the
score-
best way to play the game. I really think it is.
The score is added for the 2 people on the same team. So
Yeah.
it gives the feeling of, if you're feeling like it's a little too cutthroat, in a normal 4-player game, it's you versus 3 people. This way, it's really, okay, the 2 of us can kind of see what the other one is doing, help each other out. And it creates a little bit more of a friendly version for people who think it's too hard or too cutthroat.
You guys have variants. You guys have promo cards and,
Sure.
and stuff that add even more flowers, the frosted flowers, or
That's right.
another tile. Is that hard to add in? Here's the game, but were these things that were already in your back pocket and you took them out because you were trying to slim it down, and then later you're like,
Usually.
well, you guys need a promo. Actually, here's a rule we took out.
It's exactly how it happens.
Oh,
Like
okay.
we really drove for simplicity and like nothing no bloated weight, really fast, easy to get to the table. And so when they were like, hey, we need some more promotional stuff, we're like, we got a ton of stuff. We pulled.
We had actually a list.
We had a
of
big list.
Expansion ideas.
Yeah.
Quite a
Not all
few.
of it's done yet, so
Yeah, we,
we have
still
room
add
for
some,
more.
I guess.
Oh, there's an expansion.
We should go back to that. and
Oh
look
my!
at it.
I will
Yeah.
buy it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, there's
Good to
plenty
know.
out there that we could probably spend
Yeah.
some time on. But yeah, we like.
And variants, like, is that a hard rule, or it's like, oh, this was easy, but are there other variants that you're like, oh, how do we make and should we?
Yeah, I think most of our variants solve problems more than they add unnecessary things, or at least we hope. Like the family variant solves a problem. When you're playing in 4 players, it is more cutthroat. You know, someone can feel like if there's a young player and they're not adept at like watching the board and what's going on, they're going to get beat up a little bit. So the family variant is a vastly superior way to play with 4 players, and if one of them is a younger person, because it's just a lot of fun. There's a lot of set and like spike going on in the family variant, which is a lot of fun. But yeah, I don't know. There's an expansion to Gates of Delirium that's kind of fun that we've not told a lot of people about. But if you buy Gates of Delirium, on the back of the box is something interesting, and if you find that something interesting, and it's a puzzle, and then if you solve the puzzle, you'll solve your way to an expansion for the game that's free and it's included, and you can start playing with it immediately. But you have to like do the work and uncover it. And
That's
so,
neat.
Yeah, it was a super fun
Who came up with that idea?
Oh gosh, probably you.
I don't know. Probably it was a joint thing.
I don't even remember. But I think the idea for a hidden puzzle was really the first piece. And then, okay, what expansion do we want it to be came second. So it wasn't necessarily, this expansion has to be there. We have to get this out somehow. It was, how cool would it be? There's a perfect opportunity here to kind of hide
A cool theme to add to it. That's the perfect theme to add this weird mystery.
It fit really well. It was kind of the mood we were feeling as we were designing the game, and we just felt like we had to take that opportunity.
Well, we were also playing a lot of Mesa games and a lot of like the Loan Shark Mike
Puzzling
Selinker
things.
stuff.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, I wish we were that clever. And then we were like, oh, we could try.
No, we're not.
How do we score points here?
All right. Well, it's just based on majority. So you have majority on those, and we're gonna split this even. All right. So now just add up all of your petals you've collected and your 5-point gems.
Boy, I did poorly. Well, I have 30 points, so I'm guessing you all beat that.
39.
42.
Nice.
Nice work.
Oh, I better log this. This is an official game.
It is.
We played it. 42, 39. What'd you say?
30.
30.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's the Russian version. What was the process like of making this turn into this?
Incredible game designers, first of all. Somehow we ended up sending them 6 pages.
Gonna originally make it for a friend who liked to be prepared for anything.
Everyone still dies, but whoever lived the longest afterwards is like...
We needed it to be equally difficult to find him, no matter which suspect he
Which is
was.
actually hard.
My
Oh
brother
goodness.
even helped
He
design
actually
one
wrote
he
some
wrote a
software that helped
program
us do this because
that
it
would
was
give
so hard
you
to solve.
There's this two separate piece, but they're very joined. One goes, this other thing is gonna go. How did you guys figure how that works into this game?
Yeah, it was super hard.